Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. My name's Ian,
And I'm Crystal.
and
We are coming to you in quarantine.
yes,
Yay!
yeah. So this is all a little bit different, but hopefully you shouldn't notice too much weirdness on your end, even though we are about 10 miles apart from each other right now. It's all good.
Yes. So what you will see if you happen to be on YouTube is me filming from my library and then Ian in our normal recording area. So
Yes,
you'll get split screens. I'm not quite sure how we were going to do it, but that is Ian's job. He is
it
the tech
is
god.
to be determined. God, I would say more like I
Lackey
don't know.
jump.
I'm trying even demigod would be pushing it. I'm more like Hercules after he loses his powers. You know what I mean? Like anyway.
Oh,
Um,
but you can get
uh,
them back. You can gain them back. You'll just
I'll get them. I'll
be
gain
a
them back
true hero when you figure out how to put this together.
whenever that happens. It'll be great. We got
It will
this.
be
It's
good.
all good. It'll be good.
Yeah.
But so today, because we all miss our parks, and we we've been thinking about our schedule a bit
Hmm.
recently, and I think that kind of going on a bit of a deep dive multi-episode thing, I think that might be kind of fun, you know?
Yeah.
So
And since we are missing our beloved parks that we are actually supposed to be at near the time where you guys listen to this episode,
yeah,
instead of doing
yeah.
the park themed episodes that we had planned, we are going to do a summary. Is that what you would call this?
Or
A,
an overview? I don't
a
know.
discovering
A
of the different
discovery?
lands
Yes.
within the park. So,
Yes. That works.
yeah. So, we are starting out with the Magic Kingdom, and specifically when you first enter into the Magic Kingdom, the first land that you come across. And so, we will be doing a discovery of Main Street, USA. There is a difference
Indeed.
between Main Street, USA and Main Street. If you didn't know that, Main Street USA is the Walt Disney World version, which is the one we're going to be discussing today. And
Yep.
then Main Street is the Disneyland version, which does have differences. So, just to give you a
Yes.
little bit of clarification on that.
Yep. Absolutely. Cool. Yeah. And so there's some things that are kind of unique and about Main Street. And obviously when they went to build the Magic Kingdom, they knew that they were going to be, uh, you know, because at first they weren't planning to build a Magic Kingdom in Disney World, but when they came time to do that, of course they had to bring Main Street over and make it Main Street USA. But
Hmm.
as you said, there were some differences, but there's a couple of things that always um, that are always part of it, and it's true in Disneyland too, where it's supposed to be kind of like a movie,
Hmm.
which is sort of was interesting to think about. When we started doing the research, it was kind of fascinating. The idea that as you progress through underneath the train station and into Main Street USA proper, it's kind of like you walk up to the train station, it's blocking your whole view. It's this whole thing. It's the curtain coming down and getting you ready for the movie, and then you walk the tunnels and the lights go down, and I didn't really think about it, but it does really make sense. It's kind of the liminal space that lets you kind of transition into
And
the
the posters
world.
inside of the tunnels
Yes.
there being like the up and coming, what's coming next, what's showing next, but it has to do with the attractions that you'll be seeing later in the day. And it does kind of make sense when you're talking about they've never had when Disneyland was originally made, they had never had a theme park before in existence, and Walt only had storytellers staffed.
Right.
He never had
Right.
anybody that was, you know, attraction focused, theme park focused because they didn't exist. So it makes
Right.
sense that they would
Yeah.
open it up like a movie.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so then you come into Main Street, and they kind of like Main Street USA almost functions as like the opening credits in like a classic film where there's a large opening credits section. It's pretty. It kind of is supposed to kind of get you in the right mood to be in the movie,
Sets the
right?
mood.
Sets the mood. And then all those windows on all the different storefronts have are less obvious, if you're not paying attention, but they are credits. They are
Mhm.
actually credits in and of themselves. And it's almost kind of it's an Easter egg that, I mean, a lot of people know about now, but you look around and you'll see names of people who worked in the parks, people who helped found the parks, and we've got so many, but
Yeah,
we
we
can
had
just
to
go
we
over
had
a
to narrow
couple.
down the list to a couple of the big guys. But let's go over the criteria just because we're talking about windows right now. So for you to
Yeah.
get your name on a window, you had to do three things. First was you had to be retired. Next was you had to exemplify the highest level of service, respect, and achievement. And then the third was the management at the parks needed to agree with the Imagineers to make a window for you. So as long as you hit those three, then you can have a
Hmm.
window on Main Street
Yes,
somewhere.
in the U.S.
Well, I think that's the same with all parks. It's just, the park managers can be a little bit more picky about who they have on what
Right.
windows.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, besides the more obvious ones, we've got let's see. So we've got Mark and Alice Davis, who both had a lot to do with the parks, and the movies too.
Mhm.
But they're the only married couple
Yep.
that
So
has,
Mark was one of the nine old men, and you
Yep.
would be familiar with his um,
Yes.
image styles because he also did like Pirates of the Caribbean, the original sketches to that and
Right.
everything. And
Right.
then Alice
Right.
Davis was a costumer, a very well known costumer,
Customer. Yeah.
which was great.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
hmm Don Tatum was another one that is listed, and he is actually the first non-family president of the Walt Disney Company that had a window. And
Hmm.
the fun thing about him is that next to him, because they have a window right next to his name as well, are all the
Right.
pseudonym names of the dummy corporations that
Oh
were
yeah.
included in the Florida project for acquiring all the land down there. So
Yeah.
you'll see
Yeah.
everything. It's kind of fun.
Was and of course, like, we didn't look this up, but was he president of the Walt Disney Corporation while they were looking, or was that still
No.
Roy?
No, that was, Walt, and then Roy took over when Walt decided to
Was
go and
Yeah.
start even creating WED and Disneyland,
Yeah.
so then Roy
Right.
was
Right.
but
Yeah.
anyways, speaking
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Walt,
Yeah.
Walt has more than
Speaking of
one.
Walt. Yeah. So, I think, and neither of them are heavily disguised. One of them is above, in the train station, or nearly on the train station,
Mhm.
and then the other one is above the Plaza Restaurant.
Yep, and that's the one that I actually have a picture of. I don't have a picture of the one that is at the train
In the
station,
train
and I believe there's
station.
a
I don't
third window
one.
too in Walt Disney
Okay.
World.
Okay.
Not sure where.
I don't think I've ever seen the train station one.
Well, you didn't know about another fact that we're going to bring up with the train station a little bit later on either. So
That's true. Yeah. This
next
is
time
true.
we go, we'll have to like do a full
Just take a look at that.
investigation.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I've
the
been curious
train
about that.
station. I know
Yeah.
um there's a story, and the reason why Walt has his name in multiple areas at both ends of the Main Street walkway is so that way you always see him first, whether it be the opening credits or the ending credits, like when you're coming or when you're leaving. And
Yeah.
then
Okay.
Roy also wanted to make sure that Walt always had the best view of Cinderella's castle, um,
Yeah.
which is kind of sweet because
Yeah.
he can
That is
obviously see
sweet.
over the herds of people that gather
Right.
around and everything during the
Right.
fireworks.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Um. Let's see. So, X.
Yes.
X is he did so much of the music that we get stuck in our heads.
Existencio.
Yes. And he's done stuff for he wrote the themes for Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean, Country Bears. I think
Yep.
there's more, but I don't remember.
Grim
But
Grinning
uh,
Ghosts,
Ghosts. Well,
Yo
yeah.
Ho, Pirate's Life was actually written by him. It's not something
Yeah.
that has been around for centuries like I
Right.
used to think.
Right. Right. Yeah, oh, absolutely. I know that in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, I was like thinking that because he says it at the very, he like they reference it at the very end, and I just kind
Hmm.
of figured it was like, oh, it's like an old pirate shanty, and then later on, I'm like, wait a second,
No.
no,
The iWorks and iWorks have a window, and it's
yes,
for Ub and Don. Ub is one of Walt's oldest friends who started out
yes,
with him at Laugh-O-Gram, and then
yeah,
his son Don iWorks, both of which, did a lot for animation within the Walt Disney
yeah,
Company as well as just creation of it. I know that they
yeah,
have a little nod there on the windows as well, which I think is fun.
yeah. I like that their company was referencing stereoscopes, like it's like imagery, and it's just kind of cool.
Mhm.
The vibe they go with.
Yep. And then Elias Disney. So Papa Dearest, Daddy Dearest. The one that taught them hard work and everything has a window.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, we should just run through the rest of these real quick, but
Quick,
yeah,
yeah.
because we have a lot of stuff to cover, and I just
A lot
looked
of
at the
stuff to
time. Go
cover.
figure.
So we've got, yeah, and I have no time in front of me, so this is exciting. They've got one for Roy E. Disney, who was Walt's nephew.
Hmm.
They've got Roy O. Disney, obviously, who's his brother,
Yep.
and he's got more than one. He actually had one that was also Roy Davis, which was like his pseudonym while he was doing purchasing for the Florida project.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's the rest of them that I've got.
Yep. I will say, and we did talk about it a little bit before we decided to start recording, is that you will not find a window for Eisner on U.S. territory. And I
You
think it's
will in
because he burned a
Paris.
couple bridges. There is one in
Yeah,
Paris, but again, that, is left up to agreement of the management and Imagineering, and that is one that, he's burned a couple bridges there. But
yeah,
let's get back to Main Street. So
yes,
the timeline of Main Street's really interesting because this is during the beginning of the industrial age. So we're talking mid to
right,
late 1800s through the early 1900s, where they as you progress down Main Street, you're going to see the buildings obviously getting older, advancements
yeah,
in technology where they start out with gas lamp posts and then move to electric the closer you
electric,
get to the
yeah.
hub,
Yeah,
which
so
is
you
really neat.
actually take a little stroll through time,
Hmm.
which is neat, and everything they do is so subtle that you're not necessarily going to just pick up on it immediately, but you should be able to feel it change
Hmm.
as you go, which is cool. And then interestingly, so there's a couple reasons why they do this, but all of Main Street and a lot of Walt Disney World and all the parks are like this. The buildings are actually in a forced perspective. So the entire building, they're all built at about 7/8 scale. And then as you go up stories, they shrink the stories down as you go up. And it creates this sense that, you're looking at something that's taller or grander than it actually is. And it's there's a couple reasons why they do this. For one, it makes the whole space bigger. It makes the space feel bigger and more big. Wow, it's
Bigger,
bigger and
more
more
big.
big. This
Got
is what
it.
I've got, you guys. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you next week.
This is our pandemic special.
Pandemic special. Ian's tired. And then also it contrasts with the castle. So the castle isn't that tall, due to a number of reasons. I'm sure we'll get to at some point. But it's only 189 feet tall. And so these buildings need to not be disproportionately tall to it. So they actually scaled them in a similar perspective to the castle, so they actually match up,
Hmm.
which is kind of neat. So it makes everything still feel equally as grand as it's supposed to when you walk through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking a little bit about the beginning part of Main Street as we're progressing on, the first thing that you're going to notice is the train station. And there you're going to find, obviously, one of the first attractions, which is going to be the train. Right now, it's not running because they're still working on the Tron coaster, but
Right.
there are four actual locomotives that are originally from Mexico that they had
Yeah.
brought up for the opening of Walt Disney World. One of them is named after Walt, one of them's named after Roy, one of them's the Lily Bell, which is Walt's wife. And then the
Yep.
interesting fourth one is named after Roger Brogy, which nobody knows unless you are a train enthusiast. But he was, or an Imagineering enthusiast. He was actually the
That's
first
right.
ever Imagineer.
Imagineer.
Um,
Yeah.
and he was in charge of a lot of the transportation, the trains, the monorails, all of that stuff around the parks. And
Yeah.
so definitely it's a nice homage to him for his contributions to the park.
Next time somebody asks me like if you could have anyone, like, go and have a dinner with anybody, I would just start saying Roger Brogy and no one will have any idea who I'm talking about. Because I'm the worst, but I would have so many questions for him because I
Mhm.
love the transportation in Disney. It's always been so evocative to me.
Yeah, and I mean, the upstairs of the train station, you didn't even know.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I had no idea that there was a so there used to be a penny arcade in Main Street, and they moved all of those. I just figured that there was, when they got rid of the penny arcade, they got rid of the penny arcade, but it turns out they actually moved it in the upstairs of the train station, and it's publicly accessible. Like, you can actually, if you have a ticket, you can go up there and like play on the coin operated games, which I had no idea that was a
Yeah, it's
thing.
not
So
there's not a
something new.
lot, so it's not built up like the actual like Crystal
Right.
Arcade in Disneyland is,
Right.
but you'll
Right.
have like the ones with the auto flippers and the brrrr, where you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
see the different images moving around and a couple other things, but
Yeah.
it's it's nice that they didn't just completely get rid of those old fashioned machines.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. I wonder if those are antique or the reproductions. I have no idea.
Oh,
That's
probably
something else
antique because
probably antique because that's what they
the
do. Because the
Disney
trains were
company can
antique,
afford it.
right? Very cool. And in the middle of the main kind of square, as we're walking in, there is a statue of Roy and Minnie, where they're sitting on a bench,
Mhm.
which is kind of cool because it kind of is like a reflection of Walt and Mickey a little bit farther in that you'll see after you leave Main Street, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, but since Roy's the one who actually worked on this park since Walt
Right.
died in
Died so early.
1966,
Yep.
he has to have, his representation in there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
buildings in the Main Street USA area have lots of different time dates that are stamped on them depending on what era they were made after. But there are two
Yeah.
in specific, the Emporium and the uh, theater, Town Square
Yeah.
Theater, that actually say that they were established in 1901, which for those of you guys who are nerds like us would recognize as Walt's birthday or birth year, I should say.
Birth year. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And so with Main Street looking the way it is, and of course it's got some inspirations from different time periods and stuff because they kind of created that progression. They you would think that it'd be modeled after Marceline, which is the
And
hometown that
and that's the name that you
for
hear them
Walt.
always referencing
It's
when they're
referencing, yeah,
talking about it.
Marceline to Main Street, all that stuff.
Mhm.
But instead, since it wasn't really Walt who designed this Main Street USA, instead it was a person by the name of Harper Goff, and so it's actually modeled after their hometown, which is Fort Collins, Colorado,
Mhm.
which
I mean,
makes
there's
sense, I
little
suppose.
hints of Marceline in there, but it's
Yeah,
primarily Fort Collins, Colorado.
right, right. And I mean, and you can't totally like eliminate, like Walt's kind of uh touch
Influence.
on the place, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's like if you're gonna design it, you got to design what is feels authentic to you, which makes a lot of sense, and it's not an exact replica of Disneyland, so it's kind of cool that they did it that way.
Yeah. There are a lot of things that were available and there at the opening of Walt Disney World in 1971 that are no longer present. Things like
Right.
the cinema, the penny arcade, as we had brought up before, a tobacco shop, and swan boats, which is something that Ian and I had no idea about. I mean, we knew the cinema existed because
Right.
that building is still there and they still have the
There.
signage for it, but it's no longer
Right.
being used as a cinema, as well
Right.
as the
Right.
penny arcade arcade, same sort of thing. The tobacco shop, what I thought was hilarious is the Native American statue that you normally see in front of tobacco shops. They've moved
Yeah.
over to the Crystal Arts jewelry
Okay.
area
Okay.
as a
That
little nod. But then there's
nod.
the
Oh my
swan
god.
boats we had
Right.
no idea about.
No, I none whatsoever. And so like honestly, like I want to talk about them, but also like I want that to be like an episode that we do.
Yeah. So
Because I want to
um
we just had no idea they existed until now.
yeah,
So
so as general as possible, it was an attraction. It was a boat attraction, obviously, swan boats, and
yeah.
it ended in 1983. So prior to Ian or myself being born, so we
Yes.
had no actual knowledge
No
it
idea.
existed. So we will definitely be
Yeah.
doing a deep dive into that specifically a little bit later.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very cool. And so when building it, and I think this might be true in Disneyland as well, but in Main Street USA, all of the kind of front store windows, kind of display windows, are
Hmm.
all set lower than you would expect that in like a normal town. That way the kids can look in. So it's kind of designed. You're not going to notice it necessarily, but it's much lower than you would expect. That way that everyone can look in, which is very classic Disney.
Yeah, they want to make sure that everybody in the family can be included, including small children. Another
Yes.
thing that I love about the Emporium windows, especially, are the displays that they have. So they'll take movie miniatures and
Yeah.
make these full on, like, it reminds me of the windows that we had on the Dayton's downtown, which means
Yes.
nothing to nobody who is not from
I know.
Minnesota, but they used to have these huge story windows which had like
Yeah.
miniatures and movements and all of these different things, and Disney has that in their, Main Street USA areas as well, so it really just kind of brings back a little
Yeah.
bit of my
It
childhood as well.
does. Yeah. No, I think that most Minnesota like Twin Cities kids can relate to the Dayton's kind of downtown vibe. It definitely comes across there, which is really neat for sure.
Hmm. And then there
Cool.
there are actual characters that you'll see wandering around. This is the one land that has wandering characters, and you can go and interact with them. The um, oh my gosh, the citizens of Main Street are a bunch, like, they have a mayor, they have women's
Right.
suffragette um, people with the sashes on, and they're dressed up in Victorian garb, and you can have full conversations with them, and it's a wonderful way to bring that feeling of the Victorian era to life for you,
Yeah.
having you almost feel like you're walking into the movies, as well
Yeah.
as the other characters that you're going to see around, the Dapper Dans, which are
Yep.
a barbershop quartet that sing occasionally throughout the day. They have the
Yeah.
trolley show dancers, which, if you are watching any of our YouTube videos, I actually posted their full morning show a couple days
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
That way you can, get the little trolley car experience.
Experience full
The
trailer and not just trip on the tracks all the time.
Yes.
That's
The
me.
Main Street Philharmonic, which is a 12-piece brass and percussions band that play a lot of like early Americana music. And then there's also a piano guy outside of Casey's, and you can listen to, old school piano music.
Yeah. I like that. I like Disney being rearranged to piano. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I know. I introduced you to
Yeah.
playlist about that, and it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually I
Ragtime.
think that and now I can't remember his name. It's like Chris Calabrese or something like that. He actually was I did a little research on him. It turns out he was a resident piano player in the parks for
Oh,
some time.
neat.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. I'm gonna do more research on that before I would dive any further into that, but it's apparently a thing. And then of course, how can we forget the Smellitzers? Because
Yes.
Smellitzers.
They are so, like, sneaky but prevalent in the parks
Yes,
that
yes,
you won't even notice them if, being there, but that's because they're doing their job.
right. If you notice them, then they're too strong.
Yes. Nothing brings back the sense of nostalgia like as strongly as smell does, and that is
Right.
something that Disney really takes advantage of, especially in the Main Street area.
Yeah, they love. There's kind of like this almost weaponized cookie smell that comes out sometimes. You're like, whoa, this is yeah, wow, this smells really good. Where's that bakery?
Oh, what was it? I was going through. Was I with you when we were going back through the confectionery one Halloween, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's the smell that they pump out during one of the parade floats for Not So Scary."
Yeah, it's like
it's
I
it's
recognize that
it's
smell.
the candy smell.
Yeah, that's so cool. I
So,
love that they do that.
yeah, but there are some obviously things that have been closed, but there are some existing uh
Yeah,
shops that are still around. The Emporium, I think, is actually one of the largest shops, air quotations, that are still
yeah,
in Disney parks right now. I think that Mouse Gears kind of rivaled it, but now that Mouse Gears is closed,
yeah. It's
Emporium still
closed.
has the
Has
crown as far as that goes, which
right.
follows into the Disney Clothiers. Flipping
Yep.
over to the other side, you have the Main Street Confectionery that leads into an art shop that's in the
Shop.
old
Yep.
cinema that leads
Yep.
into the jewelry store slash dress shop. Then you go to the other side of the street because there's that little like alleyway.
Yep.
And
Yep.
on the other side of that's Crystal Arts, where they have some, artisans that are actually making stuff for you. There's a full on like kilns in the back, and
Right.
so they can
Because
do
why
like
not?
glass blowing and all of that. I took
Yeah.
video of it last time I
Yeah.
was on there. Then it goes into a couple of the different um, food areas. But then there's the
Yes.
hat shop around the corner of the entryway too when you first come in that
Right.
everybody forgets
Right.
about. Chapel
Right.
hats.
Oh,
Now,
poor
but it's known as Chapeau, but
chapeau
it's run by
hats.
Chapel.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I love that. I had no idea that was a thing. That's so
Yeah.
funny. And then on top of that, there is quite a bit of food options as well.
Nom nom nom.
Because yeah, right, foods, because there's no rides technically. So so
The train is a
there's
ride.
that's
The
true. I keep
the
forgetting about it because it's not
vehicles
running.
on Main
The
Street are a
vehicles.
ride.
That's true. This is true. I mean, so sure. Let's go with that then.
Yeah.
um. So yeah. So then there's Tony's Town Square, which is I have never been in it. I've never because I think it's just always super busy. So yeah.
It's Italian. It's based off of Lady and the Tramp,
Right.
and so there's a couple of nods to that. It is not the best,
Right.
but because it
It's
is
fair.
up front, it is popular.
Yes, I could imagine, and yeah, and it's very iconic because it's right up front, and everyone knows Main Street USA is Disney World and everything. So yeah, I could see how that would be. Then of course there's the Main Street, and wait, and so Tony's that's a sit down, right? That's like the table
Correct.
service one.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Then there's Main Street Bakery, and I believe that's a Starbucks, is it not?
Yep, they
Sweet.
redid themselves for the Starbucks location a
Awesome.
number of years back. They still offer a lot of baked goods that you can't get in a normal
Can't get.
Starbucks, but
Sure, sure. But it makes it easier if you've got yeah, because just having people like they're feel comforted by their Starbucks, so
I want my
it would make
Starbucks in the
sense to have
morning.
that available. Right, exactly. No, absolutely. We sure did. Then of course there's the Plaza Restaurant, um, and I can't remember what all happens there because
They do
I have,
burgers, it's a very
yeah,
small restaurant for Disney, which is
yeah.
honestly shocking, but they do burgers, they do, um, bottomless milkshakes if you wanna hang out and just
Okay,
drink
so
milkshakes,
very Americana.
salads.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have, french fries, loaded french fries, all of that stuff, so
is that
traditional Americana
quick ser
food.
is that quick service?
No, but the, Plaza Ice Cream Parlor right next to it,
Yes.
is a quick service. It's one where you
Service,
can
okay.
get the, um, kitchen sink ice creams.
Right. Right, right, right.
So
Love
you
that.
can get like a Mickey, mini kitchen sink and a mini kitchen sink, a mini kitchen sink.
Kitchen sink. Oh my god. They did
Yep.
this on purpose.
Yep.
Yeah, and then of course the iconic Casey's Corner, and that's kind of like ballpark fare, right? Very
Yeah, so
like
you're gonna find the hot
concessions.
dogs, Cracker
Yeah,
Jacks,
nachos.
French fries.
Yeah,
And
which
then on the far side, outside of that, is
yes,
the
yes.
Crystal
Crystal
Palace.
Palace, quite. I've
Yes,
eaten there
yes.
once, and I think I was 5.
I ate there last time we were down there. It's the character meet and greet of the
Yeah,
location, and
yeah.
they do Winnie the Pooh
The
characters. It's
Pooh.
Friendship
So that's
Day every day,
so they've been doing that with Winnie the Pooh since at least like
as far as I know.
1998. Then
Yeah. The food's
fun.
okay. I was not
Yeah.
upset with the food choices, but I was also not like, "Oh my god, this is
God, right,
phenomenal."
right. Were you there for brunch?
I was there for dinner.
Dinner. Oh, okay, because I was
Mhm,
there for brunch.
mhm. I was there
Interesting.
for dinner, and it was
Oh,
pretty good, but it's not anything that I'd be like, "Oh my god, you gotta
right.
go."
You just have to go, Margot.
But the building is
Be
beautiful.
beautiful. And what is that? That is absolutely based off of something, and now for the life of me, I can't remember what it
There's
is.
2, buildings that they kind of, like, want to
Site
say that it
as
was based off
yeah.
of. One of them was
Okay.
from the Crystal Palace that was in London for their World's Fair that's no longer around,
Yes.
but then there's also a
Right.
conservatory in California, I'm not sure what city, that is still standing, but it was a full-on, like,
Okay.
flower conservatory that
Okay.
the main body of the building looks identical to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's very cool.
And then there are just a couple other incidental things that you can
Right.
do in the Main Street area. So the first one is the Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom, which is only available to my knowledge in Walt Disney World in the Magic Kingdom. And what it is an interactive sort of card game. They give you
Yeah.
these cards to play, and they have these magic windows that you hold these cards up to, and you're able to interact with animated characters who are trying to take over the Magic Kingdom. And we'll do a whole episode about that, I'm sure, in the
Yes.
future.
Oh, yeah.
But the firehouse is where you can pick up your free deck of cards and get registered to be able to play.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think did we try that once when we were down there last together?
I had talked about it. I'm not sure if you were actually there when I did the Sorcerers
Okay.
of the Magic Kingdom. I think I had you pick them up,
Okay. Oh,
but
okay. Gotcha. Gotcha, gotcha. Oh, yeah, you might have been that day. Yeah, okay. Very good. And then of course there is the flag lowering ceremony
mhm,
where they have the main flag in the square that they will raise at the beginning of the day and lower at the end of the day, and they make kind of a ceremony about it.
mhm.
Um,
They try and
and
include, some a vet or somebody who
that
is
yep,
visiting the park
yep.
that day to be included during the flag lowering ceremony, and that's the only flag, if I remember,
Yes.
that
That
is
they raise and lower. Yeah, and
well,
it's the only American flag on property
yeah, it's
or
the only one
in the
that is
park.
actually a true American
True.
flag. All the rest of them are
Yeah.
missing, like, a stripe or a
Star or a
star.
star.
That way
Yeah.
they don't have to
Have to
take
they
them
don't
down.
yeah, it doesn't follow any of the rules of I mean basically the whole idea is if you are displaying a flag as a public business, there's a couple of rules that you have to follow from the federal government, and so they do that with the true American flag, and then the rest of them they just kind of make them not quite American flags. So from a distance you can't tell, but it basically it's a super funny workaround. Like I wasn't like I'm like, did they really do that? Like they just made them purposely wrong just so they could get around it. Like every so often, like a government inspector comes around, they have to like prove that they're fake flags. It's so funny to me. But it makes sense. Like if I'm like realistically, we know we don't want to raise and lower all these. So you know what? Let's just not worry about
Especially
it.
since, Main Street USA is kinda set up for except for the holiday times, to be like a
Yeah.
4th of July celebration. It is
Yes.
patriotic to the
It is.
max,
Yeah, it's
and
very
so
Americana. Yeah.
everything has, like, all of the banners and swag and flags,
Yes.
and if they had to take down
Yep.
every single little one
Go for
that
it.
they
It
posted,
would be terrible.
it would be so long, but, yeah, it is Main Street USA is one of my I know it is underlooked and or overlooked and underutilized. It is one of my favorite places to hang out. I mean, when I go to the parks on my own where I have no agenda, I can bump around Main Street USA for hours and find new little details that I hadn't seen
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'm sort of the opposite. I tend to blast through as quickly as possible, and it's not because of the place, it's because of the placement. And I do not like how much of a crush of humanity it tends to be.
Mhm.
Granted, there's been off peak times where it's been quieter, and I've in those moments that I've wandered around, it's been really cool. But overall, I tend to try to stay as little time right there as I can, just because it's just so many people, which is
Mhm.
a bummer because it really is an amazing space and a lot of amazing detail and work in there. But that's kind of been my problem is I have to fast forward through the intro and outro credits because it's too many people.
Well, and everybody's pulled in by the draw of the castle as well. They want to just
Yes,
kind of work
yes,
their way around, and then they see the castle and they're like, "Oh,
yeah.
I'm ready for
They
my
walk to it.
vacation."
Yes, exactly, exactly.
But next time you are in the parks when we can go back, make sure
Yeah,
look up from where you're walking. Well, also make sure you don't trip on the rails.
trip.
But
I didn't do that
spend the
last
time.
time, but the time before that.
Yeah, spend the time to look around because there's things that we didn't even have time to bring up in this episode that,
Yeah,
the character meet and greets or, just every single building has so much
yeah,
character to it that
yeah.
it's beautiful. It's very well done.
It is. It is beautiful, and it really does give you such a great vibe for what it's going to be like when you once you get through and experience this kind of huge and very unique place. So it's
Yeah, it
it's
helps you
it's
put
a it's
helps put you in the mindset of
yes,
a Disney
exactly.
vacation.
Exactly, exactly. All right. Well, and on that note, I have no idea how long we ran, but I'm sure it was pretty long.
Very long, but that's
Very
okay.
long.
Lots of
Sweet.
information.
Lots of information. Whew,
So this
okay.
has been WD Carousel of Podcast. My name is Crystal,
And I'm Ian.
and we hope you have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. Bye, everybody.